Back in 2016, I made a video outlining the rapid transit projects that would be constructed by Metro were Measure M to pass. Measure M did pass, and now we're 4 years in. So where do things stand now? I'm going to run through each of the projects for an update on where they are and how they evolved. Why now? Because we're all in quarantine, and I have a shitload of time on my hands. It's worth noting that the timelines given here, especially for projects that are scheduled to begin construction a few years out, are a bit in flux thanks to the virus. Most of the money for Project Acceleration was supposed to come from sales taxes, and well, you know. But as it stands, I'm using the best available information right now. I'll put some resources in the description if you want to follow Metro news more closely, as things seem to be changing every few days at this point. So here's an updated map showing the final build-out of all current plans. In all cases, I've chosen the alignments that seem to be the most likely, but we'll see some alternatives as we move through them. Rolling us back to today, let's start with the Crenshaw Line. The first phase of the Crenshaw, or K line, is still under construction. This phase runs from Expo Crenshaw on the Expo, or E line, and continues down to join the current Green, or C line. And it's behind schedule. The last legs of construction are eking along slowly, partially due to the contractor screwing up a lot of the work, but the line will hopefully be open to the public by late 2021. The LAX station, which will open after the line, is still on track to be completed by 2023. One of the things that's changed since last time is the planned pattern of operations. Since the Green and the Crenshaw lines, or the C and the K lines, still getting used to these letters, are connected, they can run trains in many different configurations. The Metro board voted to run the configuration seen here as a pilot for 1 year. The K line will go from Expo Crenshaw to Norwalk, while the C line will go from the South Bay to the blue, A line. Interestingly, this configuration was chosen against the recommendation of Metro staff, who wanted the C line to be a spur that went from LAX to the South Bay, with the K line taking over the rest of the current C line completely. Meanwhile, there's some in the South Bay who want a 3-line pattern, which had been the previous plan to come back, which would look like this. Although this would overserve the South Bay by quite a bit, which is why the South Bay wants it. To facilitate flexibility in how they can run the trains, Metro is expanding the 2-car platforms of the South Bay station so they can serve 3 cars. So after 1 year of this configuration, Metro will reevaluate. Could end up as any one of these 3, or a surprise new 4th configuration. One final note on the Crenshaw line. Inglewood's planning to build a people mover of their own that will connect to the K line and serve the forthcoming NFL stadium, the Forum, and the basketball arena they hope to build. They just got some state funding to match other local and private funding, and it should be completed by 2026. The next line under construction and behind schedule, the regional connector. Pace is crawling on downtown 2nd Subway, and the current projected opening date is now 2022. When it does happen, however, there's still some question as to what the new service patterns will look like. For years, Metro has been saying that the A line will continue north to Pasadena, and the E line east to the east side. That's the alignment I've displayed here, which still seems to be the most likely. However, there's been some rumbling recently that sending the E line north and the A line east, as seen here, would be the better alignment. Studies are ongoing. Oh, and as a side note, Metro's been saying that the E line will take on the gold color, but that would mean that they would have to redo the signage for the entire line instead of just half. And I'm putting my money on them not doing that. Also, I think the cyan looks better. For good news, we move on to the purple line, which is ahead of schedule? And it'll get even further ahead as the quarantines have allowed Metro to close Wilshire entirely in some areas to complete work much faster. Phase 1 to La Cienega is on track to open in 2023, Phase 2 to Century City on track to open in 2025, and Phase 3 to the VA Hospital is on track to open in 2027. All this should be done by the Olympics, and is far and away the project that will transform the city the most. Expect Metro ridership to surge each time a new phase opens. Recently, the next phase of the current L line, future A or E line, has started construction, which will extend it from Azusa to somewhere? Strangely, we don't know for sure how far yet. It will go at least to the Pomona Metrolink station, but Metro has some time to try to find additional funds to bring it to Montclair. Completion set for 2028, and there's even a chance that this could get extended once more to Ontario Airport. There's a bill in the state legislature to create a state agency to oversee it, but funding seems unclear for now, so don't expect this anytime in the near future. Soon, there will be not 1, but 3 bus rapid transit lines terminating at North Hollywood. Let's talk first about the North Valley Line, which I'm calling the Q Line. This thing, which will largely operate in bus-only lanes on existing streets, may actually open as soon as 2024. There's some minor possible variations in alignment, but mostly one street over here or there, so I'm not going to bother covering those. If this thing does get delayed or changed, it'll be because some delightful individuals in the North Valley complaining very loudly about the evils of bus lanes. But hopefully this will stay on track. Then, there's the NoHo-Pasadena bus line, which I'm calling the N, also set to open in 2024. This will head into downtown Burbank before traveling down to Glendale via one of 3 alignments. From there, it'll move on to Eagle Rock. In Eagle Rock, it'll travel mostly along Colorado, at least if Metro can survive the complaints of a handful of residents here who also do not want bus lanes. God, these things are controversial, these bus lanes. And then at Figueroa, it'll move on to the 134 again until it hits Pasadena. After Memorial Park, it'll run in mixed traffic for the last 2 stops. Metro also hopes it'll be converted to light rail as a G-line extension someday in the far future, but funding for that has not been secured. Speaking of, said G-line has some improvements under construction to speed it up and prepare it for the aforementioned light rail conversion, which is funded, but which is not currently scheduled to happen until, 2051. Which, given how badly quarantine has fucked up my sense of time, might be soon? I have no idea what year it is. I may have actually forgotten the names of the months. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, this is an infinite Thursday.
Could never get the hang of Thursdays.
Let's stay in the valley, something you never usually hear, and check out the East San Fernando Valley line, which I'm calling the T-line. Since we've last checked in, we've gotten more clarity on this line. It'll be light rail, it'll have a lot of stops, and it'll stretch from Silmer San Fernando to the G-line. Construction should start in early 2022, and the line should be open by 2028. This, however, will not be part of the line that will traverse the Sepulveda Pass. That's because they've narrowed down the options for that line to heavy rail and
monorail.
So they've narrowed the options to heavy rail. This will not be a monorail. Phase 1 of this S line was included on Metro's 28x28 list of projects to complete by the Olympics, but that's probably not going to happen. That first phase, from the Van Nuys Metrolink station to the E line, could maybe be completed by 2030 or so at the earliest. The timeline should firm up in the next year or two, as Metro is currently pursuing a public-private partnership to build this thing. Sticking with that first phase, we've got several options here for alignment. Shown here is an entirely underground alignment that actually travels under the T-line for a spell, connecting with it twice. This is because there will be a huge amount of people transferring between those lines, and having 2 options to do so will provide a lot more capacity. This alignment, HRT1, feels to me like the one Metro is shooting for. It's a little pricier and more complicated though than the others. HRT2, seen here, shunts the line over onto Sepulveda, but stays underground. HRT3 shunts it over to Sepulveda as well, but instead of a subway, it's elevated, and it adds a station. This is the cheapest of the 3, but it's already got Sherman Oaks Neighborhood Association super pissed because elevated trains are visible and make noise, so, you know. The monorail alignment, which isn't happening, is the same as HRT3, but they're not doing that bullshit, so let's shift over to the southern side. Here, there's also several options. The most straightforward has it staying under Sepulveda. A similar one has it curving over onto Overland for a bit, where it'll have a stop near Sony. It really feels like Metro's leaning towards one of these 2 in the studies, so I've used the Sepulveda one on the map. There's also an option to run it under Centinela, and this option could also swerve west earlier and connect to the E-line at Bundy instead of Sepulveda. There's a weirder option that would have the line terminate at Expo Sepulveda and then extend the purple line down Centinela to hit LAX instead, but highly unlikely. They also have a not-gonna-happen version running along the 405, both as heavy rail and monorail.
What's it called?
But I'd expect the Sepulveda route, or at least one of these 4. The timeline for this is a long time from now. Oh, and just like in the Valley, there's some fun NIMBY bullshit brewing. My favorite is that Bel Air, for some reason, is freaking out and gearing up to block this, despite it being fully underground beneath Bel Air. Like, there would be no station or track near them at all, and the tunnel in that section would almost certainly be deep bored, so it's not clear there would be literally any construction impact. Maybe they felt left out? I think we ought to propose a Bel Air streetcar system, just to give them something to fight. You know, let them tucker themselves out. Next, the West Santa Ana branch is taking shape and may begin construction relatively soon. There's an attainable goal to have the southern portion between the 105 and Artesia done in time for the Olympics. However, trouble is brewing because a state bill currently under consideration would require the line to be built in a single phase, which could not get funding in time for the Olympics, and it would also require it to choose a Union Station alignment on the north end. The last time we checked in, the Union Station alignment was the only alignment, but now it seems like the less likely option. Having the line go to Union seems like it'll be more complicated from an engineering standpoint, and even a connection to Little Tokyo is now listed as optional. The since added possibility, which feels more likely every day, is that this line will instead terminate at 7th Metro. Technically, the station will be under 8th Street, but it'll include an underground connection to 7th Metro. This will get more people to where they need to go, and also includes a Fashion District station. Completion for the second phase is still targeted at more than a decade away though, presuming it's built in 2 phases. Shifting over real quick to that Arts District station I mentioned last time, this thing's still unfunded, and as such, the head of Metro predicted that it's unlikely to happen. But it'll be so cheap in comparison to other projects, and could be built so quickly, that any funding injection from another source could bring it back. So, I'm leaving it. We'll discuss where that funding might come from in a bit. And since we're here, you may have noticed from the glimpse of the finished map that the east side lost a line from last time. Originally, there were supposed to be 2 extensions from the current terminus in Atlantic. However, further study has revealed that the State Road 60 route was actually kind of terrible for a lot of different reasons, and they're only going to build the Whittier one now. The official date has that opening 2035 still, but Metro is continuing to look to accelerate that. Interestingly, Metro actually has to spend the money for the cancelled line in that area still, so they're doing further study to see exactly what the best way to do that would be. My guess is that it's going to end up as a BRT line along Rosemead. In the South Bay, a Green Line extension is still targeted to open before the Olympics, although the official timeline has it opening in a grimmer 2030. There's 2 minor variations on this. One would run the line on the Harbor subdivision with a station at the Redondo Beach Transit Center, and another, pictured here, would run it on Hawthorne with a station at the South Bay Galleria. Both would terminate with a station at the Torrance Transit Center. Now, neither alignment actually has a station in Lawndale anymore, but I left it on the map because I think it may get added back in as a stupidly expensive grade-separated station, because Lawndale's throwing a goddamn fit about a train that crosses a street, and they're trying to scuttle the whole project. On to another project that's in flux. What the hell is happening on Vermont? First, the planned and funded BRT line will be happening, possibly finishing by the Olympics. However, there's been plenty of talk about what a future currently unfunded conversion to rail looks like. A study's narrowed it down to 3 possibilities. First, a new light rail line that starts at Wilshire, Vermont and heads south to 120th, fully underground between Wilshire and Gage, and center running in Vermont after that. Second, a heavy rail version that's fully underground. And third, a version of that that's a red line extension. This one's extremely complicated because they'd have to shut the red line down for a long period of time to build the junction that would connect the new tracks, but if they did, they could change the operation pattern of the red line. It'd require a transfer at Wilshire, Vermont to get downtown now, but the upside is they could run twice as many trains on both the red and purple lines outside of downtown, since they'd no longer be sharing tracks. Whatever's chosen would likely be built in 2 phases, first between Wilshire and Expo, and then from Expo to 120th. Any line on Vermont would have huge ridership and would be worth the price, but there's no funds for a rail line there in Metro M. There has been some noise about a potential public-private partnership, so we'll see. Moving on, Metrolink may add 2 infill stations between downtown and Burbank. These were decided upon as a good fix to transit accessibility in the area, but there doesn't seem to be a clear timeline yet on this, as far as I can tell. As for the rest of the Measure M projects like BRT on Lincoln, or the C or K line extensions to Santa Fe Springs, these are far enough off that there hasn't been any evolution on those yet. Oh, but we missed one. Crenshaw North, which may get an additional station at the Hollywood Bowl, since apparently it's the best place to launch the TBMs. The last time we checked in, there was a big debate about the alignment. And there's still a big debate about the alignment. La Brea, pictured here, would be the most direct, but it almost entirely avoids WeHo. And it's now more expensive as they've switched it from elevated to underground. Fairfax, La Cienega, and San Vicente serve WeHo much better, but they're more expensive and they twist the line into an increasingly less direct route. And to really double down on that approach, this crazy hybrid route was proposed, which is trying a little too hard to please everyone. The tension here is that WeHo wants this line badly, and they want it soon. And they deserve it too. They've been extremely supportive of Metro, and the line would have huge ridership. And the key to accelerating this line probably runs through WeHo. There's talk of creating an enhanced infrastructure financing district, which I am going to avoid describing on the grounds that I will 100% botch it. But if WeHo and LA both participate, it could generate the necessary funds to start construction much sooner. Probably not to be finished by the Olympics, but maybe soon after that. Of course, for WeHo to participate, that means giving them what they want. While La Brea does make sense in terms of system-wide connectivity, it doesn't serve WeHo well, so it'd be out. San Vicente, on the other hand, is the alignment that they're particularly shooting for. A report from just a few days ago, though, seems to suggest that Metro is favoring the La Brea, Fairfax, and a hybrid alignment, God forbid. So we may wind up stuck with that thing as a compromise. And here, I'll veer briefly off into my own little personal crusade, because I think it's still possible to have the best of both worlds. La Brea does make the most sense for the route for this particular line, but WeHo should have its own line too. Is it possible to have both? What would it look like if we built the La Brea alignment as well as a spur that came into WeHo? Depending on how far the initial spur goes, it perhaps could be funded by the EIFD. But if we set aside the question of funding for a moment, dangerous, I know, but we'll get back to it. What if we built that initial segment from the Bowl to Wilshire La Cienega? Essentially, we'd be building both the La Brea and La Cienega or San Vicente alignments. And this would allow us to expand the new line into something incredibly useful on a system-wide scale in the future. It could extend south on La Cienega to Culver City, where it could then run along Venice all the way to the beach, where there's plenty of room for a rail line. What about the other end? A couple options. Zooming in, let's take a look at the La Brea Santa Monica station, built here with 2 platforms, and with a junction box where the lines meet to give us a luxury of choice. Now, we could let this stay terminated at Hollywood and Highland if we want to keep it easier for people in WeHo to get to Hollywood and vice versa, But if we single track that section where the two lines join up, which would be much cheaper, we'd have capacity on each line. So if that's the final goal, it would be worth double tracking that from the start. However, returning to the junction box, we can leave the possibility to add on an eastward extension later, so the trains from the new line, instead of going to Hollywood and Highland, travel through Hollywood along Santa Monica Boulevard. From there, it could continue northeast and connect to Glendale, or it could go through Silver Lake and Echo Park to Union Station, and even go further along the old proposed Silver Line route in the San Gabriel Valley. Of course, unless you initially double track it to Highland, it does still have trains on the Crenshaw Line until you build that eastern extension. The engineering challenges here are, it seems, much more complicated. And to be clear, this is not an option currently under consideration. But it does lead to the most logical final build-out. At least, it seems that way to me. The environmental review for this is set to begin very soon, as early as next month, so now would be the time to add the option to the study. Even if it doesn't make fiscal sense and seems out of scope now, things may change before an alternative needs to be chosen that could make it more financially viable. So let's address that funding gap. There's a lot of projects that could benefit from a large funding injection. The money for this, at the moment, does not exist. We're not likely to propose any more sales taxes to get us there anytime soon. We can cobble together money from things like EIFDs and public-private partnerships, but in most cases this isn't going to get us nearly far enough. So what's the other option? The feds. Now, Metro is already aggressively pursuing every dime it can get from the federal government, and it's been pretty successful. But the amount of money available from the federal government just isn't very high in the grand scheme of things. At least not in this moment. There's an obvious way that could change. If, come January 2021, the Democrats control both the presidency and Congress, which is slowly becoming more of a possibility, then there's a real chance a Green New Deal passes early in Biden's term. Just weeks ago, during the quarantines, LA had the cleanest air of any major city on Earth. Imagine hearing that 20 years ago. How unlikely would that seem? The effect of taking cars off the road en masse has just been illustrated to us in a particularly vivid way. And there's little doubt that the ensuing recession, or God forbid depression resulting from the pandemic, will need a New Deal-style jobs program to help correct the economy. A Green New Deal that prioritizes urban transportation does wonders both as an environmental policy and as an economic stimulus. And say what you will about Joe Biden, the man does love his trains. So it seems to me at least, Democratic control of the federal government is our best chance to open up funding possibilities that will help LA build out its network fast. And every new line that gets added, the complaints that the metro doesn't go anywhere get more and more quiet. Imagine a system like this. Or even like this. How few parts of town are left that are completely unserved? How many places could you live without a car? Does that feel like an absurd pipe dream right now? I mean, yeah, without question. But in the wake of the virus, things are going to change. Some way, somehow. I think people will come out of this more open-minded to what an expansive federal government can afford to fund, as well as more conscious of the impact our carbon-heavy economy has on the environment. The Overton window can shift, and things that were unthinkable a year ago may start to seem possible. It's a bit of preaching to the choir here, because it's not like California or most parts of LA are going to be voting red, but do what you can to help flip the Senate in November. Donate, phone bank, talk to friends and family who live in states with competitive elections, and be conscious in primaries about how bold your representatives are willing to be. And on that note, I'll end this long-ass video and let everyone get back to their Infinite Thursday. Stay safe. Unless you're watching this in a post-pandemic future. In that case, what the hell are you doing inside? Go and hug benches and lick strangers or something.